Welcome to Church Family Update 2024. Are you guys excited? Yeah? Moderately? Maybe as excited as Blaze was? All right. So Church Family Update, during Church Family Update, the whole idea is that we want to look back on 2023. We want to celebrate all that God has done. And then we're going to look forward and talk about the direction that God is leading us in 2024. Now, this is the third year that we have run this update as part of the service. We've chosen to do so largely because we want as many people as possible to be able to participate. Our friends up at Tofield Lions Church, their church family update is a Tuesday night. I don't know about you, but in Camrose, Tuesday is one of the busiest nights of the week. And so we're really glad to be able to run this update right now instead of trying to expect you to come back midweek. And so this is the reason why we're doing it. Our churches, in this season of our church's development, the leadership team, and I desire for as many of you as possible to be part of the celebration and update. So you all get to come on the ride with us. And so let me take you on a journey back in time. 13 months ago to the beginning of 2023. As I was looking back to January 2023, I keep a journal, and so I was flipping back through, and there was some real excitement as we began last year. With our appreciative inquiry vision quest finalized, with our guiding documents in hand, we began the year by preaching our way through what it means to join Jesus on mission, to be a people who long for others to find hope and healing. We talked about pursuing wholeness with the triune God. We talked about working for true community. We talked about connecting the generations and serving our neighborhood. And as a leadership team, this vision became a guide for us. As we considered ministry events, as opportunities came to us, we filtered them all through this lens as we listened to Jesus. Having that compass direction from Jesus empowered us as a leadership team, and it gave us a real sense of purpose to all that we were doing at the church. It took until about May, June for our banners to make its way to the wall, but as we began last year, we had these 6 categories in mind, and we just spent all of January preaching our way through these things. Now, as we moved into last year's season of prayer and fasting in February, we spent significant time praying for 3 big things. We were praying for building accessibility. We were praying for wisdom to step into our vision. We were praying for resources and finances. And as we put our prayer list together, the request that was the most tangible, the most urgent of the 3 in my mind was that request for the accessibility grant. As I shared during our update last year, at a leadership team meeting on October 31st, 2022, we recognized again the need to find a solution to our building's bi-level design. It's been a great building for us, but having stairs going up and down has made life challenging for many, and there have just been people that have not been able to make it into this space because of our design. And so on October 31st, 2022, at our meeting, we said, we got to do something. We just need to figure something out. And the leadership team said, you want to what? Just look for grants again. We got to find something that's going to work. And so at around 3:30, after the meeting was done, I hopped on my computer and I went to a federal grant website that I'd checked before. And there basically was like small projects, small business, and large projects. And in years past, I'd always clicked on the first one that was designed for kind of home and residential. We're not a home. I'd always clicked on the bottom one, which was really designed for like schools and hospitals and like city halls. We're not a city hall. And then I kept looking at that small business one, and I said, we're not a small business. I don't think this one applies to us. But on October 31st at about 3:30, I said, I wonder what this actually looks like. And I clicked, and it said, small businesses and not-for-profits. Guess what? We're a not-for-profit. That meant that this grant actually was for us. And then I looked at the closing date, November 1st, 2022. And I called Bruce and I said, Bruce, I got 23 hours to apply for this grant. Is this something we should do? And he said, absolutely. And so we applied for that grant. In December, while we were serving at Martha's Table, I got a phone call from someone at the federal granting site just confirming some details. And in December, we were moved to the next round of application. And so as we entered our season of prayer in February, we'd been told that we would hear from the granting organization in March of 2023. And so our prayer was really focused around this request. Lord Jesus, we need to hear in March. We need our building to be accessible. Would you give us this grant? Would you open doors? Now, as some of you might remember from last year in March, we actually didn't hear yes, but we also didn't hear no. They said, hey, you are not part of the first round of grant money, but maybe you'll hear from us in June. And so in March of our season of prayer and fasting, our prayer shifted. Okay, God, we actually are now asking that we get the money in June. Now, June came and went, and in July, I emailed the granting organization and didn't get much of a response. But I know that as you continue to press into this prayer faithfully, that God opened doors. And so I'm so excited to share with you an official public announcement. Press release. Centerpoint Church receives support from Enabling Accessibility Fund. Through the help of a grant from the Enabling Accessibility Fund, Centerpoint Church is installing wheelchair lifts to help people attend services and events in the building. This grant allows us to make both of our floors accessible to those in wheelchairs, walkers, and those who find stairs difficult. Due to our split-level building design, accessibility at Centerpoint has always been a challenge. While broadcasting our service online has helped some people connect with our services, our building limited who could participate with us in our services and events. As well, our opportunities to serve the community by hosting funerals, sharing meals, and running events were all restricted because we could not get everyone in the space. We knew that we needed a solution, but could not see a way forward. For decades, Centerpoint has tried to figure out ways to increase accessibility. Designs for ramps, quotes for chairlifts, many things were considered, but nothing worked until this grant from the Enabling Accessibility Fund was awarded. This project that you see in the foyer is funded in part by the Government of Canada's Enabling Accessibility Fund. With the grant, Centerpoint has partnered with local company Thrive Accessibility to perform the work. We're excited to get started with the project and are looking forward to the day in the near future when the work will be completed and we can welcome friends old and new into our space and we can serve our neighborhood in greater ways. So friends, we can clap for that. That was absolutely a God story, a God moment. And I know that when I had kind of given up on hope, because, November is a long way from March, right? We expected a yes in March. We expected a possible yes in June. And then for that to go all the way till November, I know that I had lost touch a little bit with that request, but I know that many of you leaned in, and this is just an example of God's incredible faithfulness. There will be more announcements as we get closer to them officially being certified and up and running, but we're just so excited for the day very soon when we can make use of those chairlifts. So that was our season of prayer and fasting. We were leaning especially into this request. And as we finished our season of prayer and fasting last year, we moved into Easter. We enjoyed some very meaningful times together. We had a Passover potluck meal. We commemorated Good Friday with a Tenebrae service. We celebrated the resurrection of Jesus on Easter Sunday. And then following Easter, we launched a 9-week Alpha course. Alpha is a series of conversations about some of the foundational elements of Christianity. And at our tables, we had some significant discussions about faith and what it means to follow Jesus. It was just a really good time of conversation to kind of get back to those basic things. At the end of June, we had a time of celebrating all who served at Centerpoint through the ministry year. Last June, we recognized over 50 different people who helped to make life and ministry at Centerpoint Church possible. And I want to thank all of you again for your service. Every job matters. Even if you feel like you can only serve infrequently, many hands make light work. And so we appreciate all of the many ways that each of you contributes through prayer, through encouragement, and through participation in the events in the life of our church. As summer turned to fall, as part of our serving our neighborhood, we held a kick-off barbecue. This was a fun event. It was a great way to meet some of our neighbors. And not only did we meet some of the neighbors who lived around the church, it was really cool to connect with people that literally live, just a few blocks away from our church that saw the sign and came over to have a meal with us. But it was also a really good chance for you to invite your neighbors, for you to invite your friends. It was so good to be able to just celebrate together, to enjoy community together. And not only did we make connections through that event, we were also blessed to be able to use the Centricam barbecue and to rent our bouncy castle from Camrose Bouncy Castles. But we were also able to gain experiences that I've then been able to share with other churches and groups that are looking to connect with their neighbors. And so not only did it help us meet our neighbors, but we're also taking that idea and helping other churches meet their neighbors. In September, we also began our Apprenticing to Jesus series. This weekly time in the book of Luke has been a great reminder that to be a Christian is to be an apprentice. If you call yourself a Christian, that means you are on your apprenticeship journey. And an apprentice is someone who is spending time with Jesus. They're doing the things that Jesus does. They're becoming like him. And this apprenticeship journey is a journey of a lifetime. But the goal is that we would become people of love like Jesus for the sake of others. As apprentices, we are joining God's family business of helping people find hope and healing in Jesus. And so these sermons have been helping me to grow in my walk, and I hope and pray that God is using them to help you grow as well. As many of you know, not only can you connect through the sermon and service here in person, but there are quite a few of you that participate through YouTube. And just because I was curious, I don't often pay attention to all of those analytical type things, but I looked at our YouTube analytics, and in 2023, we had 3,173 views, and that's up from 2,200 views in 2022. And so this is not only something that those of you who can't make it into our building or who live distant or who are working, it's not only something that you're making use of, but also those families that have illness. They're just like, hey, you want to what? We're sick. We're not going to go share that with our friends here. We're going to tune in online. And so it's really cool just to be able to continue to be in community with you, not only in person, but also online. And we're excited to be part of this all together. So we recognize the online family. We thank you for all the ways that you connect with us. And jumping back to the idea of apprenticing, this fall we also launched 2 small groups using a curriculum called Practicing the Way. The idea of practicing the way is that you take 4 weeks to drill down and study one of the practices of Jesus, with the goal being to implement that practice into your life. The small group that I'm part of has studied prayer, Sabbath, and solitude, and it's been cool to build these practices into my own life and to start to see others in our group begin to do the things that Jesus did. This week, as I mentioned, both of our groups will be starting to learn about fasting, and we're excited to see how God uses this practice to give us a greater hunger for God. A few other things that I want to celebrate. First, Sunday, Story Sundays and the Storytellers. In 2022, we began to dream about how we could connect the generations in different ways and involve our kids in learning and sharing the grand story of God. And the result was the Storytellers group and Sundays where we step out of our sermon and step into the grand story of God. This year, recognizing that some of the stories we want to tell take a bit more work and preparation, we've had big stories every other month and smaller moments in between. But each week, our storytellers have been working hard, led by Kathy, to both learn God's word and also share those stories. Our next Big Story Sunday is April 7th, where our team will be sharing with you the story of Joshua and the Battle of Jericho. That is going to be a very exciting one. You are not going to want to miss that. It's going to be legendary. It has it all. The more we talk about it, the more I'm like, man, this thing has it all. So it's going to be great. The second thing that I want to share and celebrate with you is just the ways that we've been able to bless and serve our neighbors and our neighborhood. For the second December in a row, we've served at Martha's Table at Messiah Lutheran Church. It's a 4-week rotation, 4 weeks that we do once a year as part of Martha's Table, which is like a soup and sandwich lunch. At one point, I counted 11 of us there, ladling soup, scrubbing counters, making sandwiches, washing dishes. And the coordinator from Messiah was so impressed with our group that she said that she's going to make sure the schedule always has her set up to serve alongside us. Because she was just like, man, these are the people that I want to be serving with. Friends, that is a credit to you. And that is a credit to Jesus in you. She could see your love and humility. She could see just the excitement that we had to be a blessing. And so I just want to celebrate that with you. We also have continued to share bread and coffee and a listening ear on Wednesdays from 1 to 3. During this, we partner with NeighborAid. They give us the bread, and then we open the foyer and we give it away. Freely given, freely shared. Last year, I estimated that we would be giving away over $10,000 worth of bread products. And guess what? With inflation, I'm sure that number is way above 10,000 this year. But more than the bread, we've had the opportunity to pray for people, to create community, to give and to bless, to get to know our neighbors and our neighborhood. And so I'm so grateful for all who serve and make the bread ministry possible. Occasionally, it's a little bit intimidating because there's just so many of you with smiling faces hanging out on the stairs. Occasionally, people have walked in and said, there's 7 people all looking at me, ready to get me coffee or get me a bag or say hello. But that, again, is just a way that we're saying, hey, we're here. And we just want to help. We want to listen. We want to love. We want to bless. And so thank you to all those that make the bread ministry possible. Third thing that I want to celebrate amongst many things that we could be celebrating. Once again, we were able to partner with Catherine Egan in writing Christmas cards to seniors in care homes. And once again, it was a great opportunity for us to get into the Christmas spirit and turn our attention to those in our neighborhood that might not be seen or noticed. And so thank you, Catherine, for inviting us to join you in the project. It was so cool to be able to write over 200 cards that then went to the different Bethany group homes and seasons in town to those that may, again, just not be noticed at Christmas. Now, typically in a church family meeting, in addition to the times of celebration, we also would talk about leadership team stuff and we talk about budget stuff. And so I do want to do that now. First, our leadership team this past year was made up of Bruce Enerson, Carla Werner, Lori Thompson, and Jen Pollock, as well as myself. Our group met monthly to hear the updates about what was happening at the church, to give direction and wisdom as we talked about the ministry opportunities. And whenever there was a need, this group stepped in, and they were the first in line to help out. One of the things that we've done with this group is we've done a survey, a gift survey called Working Genius. And one of the things that we discovered is that each of the people in our group have different perspectives, different giftings, different ways that they lean in to what God is doing. And so it was so exciting to be able to recognize that and build into our group this year. Again, they step out to help in so many different ways. They bring different perspectives and different gifts to the table. And I want to give a special shout out to Lori for her help in making the fall kickoff possible and for her consistent partnership in prayer. I want to give Jen a shout out as well. She helps out in so many different ways. But I want to give her a special shout out for the website redesign. I don't know if you noticed, but our website was given we actually had a fresh website created, and Jen did a lot of work in organizing the pages, finding the information, connecting with the web provider. She even took one of the photos on the main page, right? I mean, that is sort of above and beyond when you're out there walking around Mirror Lake yourself saying, hey, I just need some content for this website. So special shout out to Jen for the website work, again, amongst many other things. I want to give a special shout out to Carla. Carla is also a prayer warrior for our church. This year especially, she's leaned into her discernment gifts. And one of the things that I found so helpful is just bouncing ideas off of her and getting some of the great perspective and encouragement we get that insight from her. I'll often give her a phone call and kind of walk around the sanctuary during the week and just say, hey, this is what we're thinking. How do you hear this? What does this sound like? I also want to give a special shout out to Bruce and Wendy for their energy in getting the accessibility project to where we are today. As soon as Bruce heard that we were awarded the grant, he and Wendy sprung into action. He began to work the phones. He called all of the different companies that did this kind of lifts. They did a journey into Edmonton to try to talk to some of the people there. He met with some of the contractors. He was lining all that details up. And Bruce was instrumental in connecting us with Thrive Accessibility. And so I just want to say a special shout out because, again, I would have gone, I just didn't have that same drive. I didn't have quite the same time, and he just leaned in and made this thing happen. So when you see him before he gets a chance to leave, just clap him on the shoulder and say, Bruce, thank you for leaning in and getting this done. He also has been one of the key holders to sort of open up for Jacob and get some of those construction things in when I wasn't available to be here. And so they've done just fabulous work in leaning into this project. And so a very special thank you for that. So the leadership team. Our leadership team is appointed by our district. And they have served you very well in 2023. They continue to serve to make ministry at Centerpoint possible. And so again, as you have a chance to connect with Bruce and Carla and Lori and Jen, just give them a thanks for the work that they're doing and just helping, keeping this place moving forward. All right, the last thing that I want to talk with you about is money. For those of you who've been around Centerpoint Church for a longer time, you may remember that this church actually restarted about 8 years ago. It still has the same charitable number as when it was Camrose Alliance Church many, many years ago, but this has been restarted, and as part of the restart, there was an initial influx of district support that helped carry the church along. But the whole idea was that eventually Centerpoint was to move to a place where we were self-sufficient, where the money that was being donated to the church was enough to cover the expenses of the church. And for my first 4 years here, that didn't really happen. Even with district support, there were often more expenses at the end of the year than there was money coming in. But there have been some gifts and some different reserves that have helped to backstop our congregation. 2 years ago, our district subsidy expired. They said, okay, guys, make it happen. And God was so faithful, and you were so faithful. And last year, we finished in the black. And this year, we also have finished just about even, especially when you count the grant. We're very much in the black, but separating that out, because that's dedicated to some other projects, we're very close to even. And there are a number of you that have given larger gifts, either year-end gifts or gifts because of unique circumstances. And I just want to give a special thanks to those of you, you know who you are, for trusting God and also for trusting us with those resources. There is no way that we could have continued to move forward the way that we have without those gifts. So again, I just want to say a special thank you to all those who have given in that way. I also recognize that there are a number of you that have grown your giving, and you've sacrificed in giving this year. I want to thank you as well for trusting God and trusting us. Thank you, thank you, thank you. At this point, I tried to figure out what else I could say other than thank you, and I just kept writing thank you. I kind of got stuck in a bit of a loop, because all I can say to all of those who give to support the work of Centerpoint Church is thank you. You make ministry here possible, and so we are just so, so, so grateful for you. You are partnering to bring the hope and healing of Jesus to our community and to our neighborhood, and oftentimes we don't even... individuals around, we often don't even know all the work that God is doing. I don't even know all the work that God is doing. I hear a little bit more of it than maybe some others do, but oftentimes we don't know all that God is up to. And so all we can say is thank you. As we look into 2024, obviously, as we were building our 2024 ministry budget, there was a recognition around the table that inflation is real. Right? As we put together our 2024 ministry budget, we recognize utilities are just going up. Insurance is just going up. Expenses are just going up. But we also didn't want to cut ministry opportunities just to try to shrink the bottom line. As we were talking with the leadership team, I said, you want to know what? I could make this budget balance real easy. All I do is I just chop pretty much everything, and then I just add numbers over here on the income side, because it's all a guess anyway. And they said, no, we don't really want you to do that. We want to say yes to opportunities as God brings them. And so we would much rather say that this is a stretch budget. We would much rather say yes to ministry funding already, and then just ask our congregation to continue to lean in. And so we have put forward a ministry budget that looks for a 14% increase in giving, recognizing that we typically use about 85% of our budgeted expenses. And so you can recognize, okay, this should get us just about even. Again, as long as we don't step into all of those things. And so as a leadership team, we're going to be, we're just going to be really watching the money, and we're also going to be attempting in the weekly email to give you more information about what is happening with the money month to month to month. But we want to grow. The too long didn't read is we want to grow our giving while still living in our means. That's sort of the way that the budget was put forward this year. We also know that this year, as our lifts come online, there will be a need to make some other modifications to make our space hospitable and accessible. And so, again, we want to still be saying yes to some things. There will probably still be some other different tweaks to our building that need to be made. And so for those of you that love to look at numbers, My plan is to send the full budget out this week with the weekly email so that you can look it over. If you're not part of the weekly email, you can use, again, the QR code on the seats in front of you, or you can follow the Connect With Us link in the YouTube description so that we can add you to that email. That will give you guys a chance to sort of say, hey, I want to crunch the numbers. I want to see what's actually going on. So that's where we've been. Where are we headed in 2024? Part of a church family update is not only looking back, but it's also looking forward. And as I was trying to kind of go through that list in my mind of, okay, God, where are we headed? What do you have for us? I realized that our season of prayer and fasting card, it really is showing us the direction that we're headed. It's letting us know where we're going. And so, our plan in 2024 is to continue to pursue wholeness with the triune God. And part of that is going to look like developing some practical steps and pathways for each of us to grow in freedom and wholeness with God and the courage to follow them. Not only is it something we're individually praying, we're saying, God, we want to grow in wholeness. We want to have courage to take those next steps. But as a church, we want to develop a few pathways or touchstones to be able to say, hey, here's your next step. Here's your next step. Here's your next step. Caleb is an automotive apprentice. I think that's your title. One of the things he knows is he knows his next step. He's got to go to the next level of schooling. He's got to get the next certifications. He's got to go to the next place of training. The apprenticeship model has done a very good job of giving a blue book to say, hey, this is how you progress. Ours is not going to be quite as rigid as here's the levels, but at the same time, we want some touch points so that you can look at something and say, hey, my next step might be to learn about prayer. My next step might be to grow in my abiding. My next step might be to deal with some character things or to step into forgiveness. And so we're praying that God would give us some real practical steps and pathways for us to journey and for each of us to know what our next step looks like as we follow Jesus in this path of apprenticeship. The next thing that we're growing into as we work for true community is we're looking for our church to become a place of reconciliation as we learn to forgive others and process any bitterness in our hearts. Again, this is something that we're praying individually. We're saying, God, would you search me? Would you show me places of unforgiveness or bitterness in my heart? I'm not going to lie to you. As I was doing my quiet time this week, God showed me a little bit of bitterness that I was hanging on to. And it was actually really good to be able to say, okay, God, I didn't see that in there. I didn't expect to find that, but I need to clip that root of bitterness in my heart before it grows into something much worse. And so there's an element of this where as we're praying for the church, we're also asking God to search our hearts and to show us those places of unforgiveness and bitterness. But again, we also want to begin as a congregation to move into that place of saying, hey, what does it look like to be a place of reconciliation? What does it look like to reconcile with our neighbors? What does it look like to model reconciliation with one another and to forgive one another when we offend one another? I love the language of working for true community. It says that we know that relationships can be noisy and messy, but we seek to demonstrate radical sacrificial love, generosity, and hospitality. That is true, friends. Relationships are noisy and messy. Relationships are difficult at times. That as we step into forgiveness, as we step into reconciliation, we want to grow our true community. And then we also want to develop a little bit more of our congregational care. Lori has some ideas that you're going to be hearing about through the weekly email in the next couple weeks. We just want to kind of step up our game of knowing who's available to help whenever a need arises in our congregation. So be looking for that. Our third prayer request is for deep compassion and practical ways that we can love and encourage one another in the name of Jesus, specifically those outside of our generation. This connects into our banner that we connect the generations. And one of the things that I've said over and over and over is that part of the flavor, if you will, that we want for our times together, whether it's Sunday morning, whether it's downstairs at our potluck time, whether it's some of our events, we want that feeling of a Thanksgiving family reunion time. I don't know if your family gathered at Thanksgiving in large amounts, but my mom has 7 brothers. And by and large, those 7 brothers all had larger families. And so there were times where there would be 40 or 50 or 60 of us at my grandparents' house. My grandpa actually, once all the kids were out of the house, and as this family kept ballooning, he went into his basement and he said, I don't actually need these 2 bedrooms anymore. I'm going to build a cafeteria. And so he turned his basement into a cafeteria-style super room with a special storage closet for tables. So that the family could be hosted for Thanksgiving. And no matter where we got, whatever the major holiday was, whenever that family got together, we would just all be together. And my uncles loved egging my brother and I on in competition. They'd love to see us like fighting one another because it was just entertainment for them. But again, all in it together. That was the language. And I can still remember at my uncle's 40th birthday party, I would have been like 8 years old, so kind of Katie's age, just hanging around at the edge. I remember them talking about retirement. And as an 8-year-old, I was suddenly exposed to the idea that at some point, not only did you start working, but you prepared for a time to stop working. And while I didn't understand all that retirement was, at that very young age, I got the window that, okay, there's some categories here, some buckets that I need to get information about. And then, when I was 16, then when I was 25, and then when I was 38, I knew I had this category that could be filled up by other information. And so part of the vision of all being together is that we're all learning together. You're learning from the kids' moments. The kids are learning from the adult moments. All the moments are just moments, and we're building buckets that we can fill together of knowledge about God, about knowledge about what God is doing. And we also recognize that a lot of what the studies about church dynamics are realizing is that when your kids are invested in by other adults, they have a greater tendency not only to stick in church, but also to be able to navigate to other churches, right? Oftentimes in the studies, they say, hey, when kids go off to college, when kids leave the church that they grew up in, they have a tendency not to know how to connect into other places and spaces. But as we connect across the generations, as we meet and connect with different people, as our kids meet with you and get to know you, they have more capacity when they step into another church in another city to basically be like, hey, there are people that I can connect with. So we really are leaning into this connected generations. We don't necessarily know what those practical ways are yet, but we want to be a place where we just know each other's names, where we cross the generational gaps, and where we are all in this together. The last thing that we are leaning into is our serving our neighborhood. Once again, our prayer is that God would show us who our neighbors are, both at our homes and at Centerpoint, and that there would be open doors to get to know and serve the ones whom God highlights with the hope and healing of Jesus. There are things that we are already doing, but we're also saying, God, would you bring us other opportunities, and would you help us to be wise about the opportunities that come into our lives? We're still not a very big congregation. As you look around here online, friends, as you look at the little picture of how many people are watching online, you recognize we're still not a very big congregation, and so we can't say yes to everything. There are needs all over the place. There are opportunities to serve our neighbors everywhere, and so a lot of this fourth prayer request is, God, would you show us the 1 or 2 things to say yes to? Would you show us the specific things that we can step into so that we can serve our neighborhood, so that we can love our neighbors? And as I consider all 4 of these requests and all 4 of these different categories, the big theme for 2024 is that we are choosing the Jesus way. We want to continue to follow in that path of apprenticeship. We want to just keep saying yes to the Jesus way as we continue to press forward as a congregation. Jesus has given us some direction. He's let us know that we're joining him on mission, and we're longing to see people find hope and healing in him. And so a lot of what this next few months is Jesus, would you show us? Would you show us those people that need hope and healing, and would you help us to step into that hope and healing ourselves? So what we want to do to close our meeting, our church family update, is the band is going to come and they're going to lead us in a song called The Jesus Way. It's just a reminder of what it looks like to be on mission as apprentices. And then once the band is done, I'm going to come and I'm going to lead us in our vision prayer. But I just want to, before they come, I just want to pray a prayer of thanksgiving to say, Jesus, thank you for all that you have done. And so pray with me, please. Lord Jesus, we thank you for all of these amazing things that you have done. We look to you and we celebrate you. We celebrate the just the things that you've shown us, the ways that you've moved. We celebrate the grant, and just for the way that that is going to open up this building. And Jesus, we just thank you that in addition to all of these things, that you are opening up our hearts, that you are making Centerpoint a place of light in our neighborhood, and that all are welcome. And so we just pray that you'd help us to lean into that. Would you help us to pursue wholeness? Would you help us to work for true community? Would you help us to connect the generations? Would you help us to serve our neighborhood? Jesus, we are choosing your way. We are following that path of apprenticeship, and we ask that you would lead and guide and direct us in this. And we pray these things in Jesus' name.